I'm Marissa, and I'm the creator behind Kaino Designs, a small business specializing in handmade jewelry. I started Kaino Designs in 2016, and ever since then I've been making and selling my jewelry. My current designs feature polymer clay, a medium I hadn't used until about 6 months ago. To find out what worked best for me, I spent months poring over polymer clay blogs, reading tutorials, and running my own experiments. So I wanted to share with you my 5 top tips that I learned, things that I wish I knew from the very beginning that will hopefully help you in your clay creations. So if you find the tips in this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and let's dive right into it. Alright, tip number 1, minimize imperfections before baking. So this sounds like a very simple concept, and it is, but it's an extremely important one, especially when you're starting out with polymer clay. Yes, you can fix things in the post-process stages of sanding and buffing, but any imperfections that you have at this time will be much harder to deal with than if you were able to fix them before you bake your clay. So work with clean hands, wipe down your tools, your pasta machine, and your tile before working, and especially when you're switching between light and dark colors to prevent color smudges. Minimize nail marks on your clay with shorter nails and avoid over touching your raw clay because then you can get lots of thumbprints and disfiguration in your final shapes. The next tip also helps with minimizing problems, so on to tip number 2. Tip number 2, the baking sandwich. This is the best way I found to bake my clay pieces, and it results in clay that is flat, clay that is the right flexibility and strength, and clay that also has minimal air pockets on the bottom surface. Like tip number 1 says, the better you can get your clay pieces before they go into the oven and during the baking process, the less time you'll have to spend to get your pieces looking professional at the end. So what is the baking sandwich? On the bottom, you have your ceramic tile shiny side up. Next is a piece of standard printing paper with your raw clay pieces carefully laid on top. Give them a gentle press to make sure they are flattened down, and you can wear gloves for this if you're worried about fingerprints, but usually if you're gentle, it'll be okay. Then, to prevent distortion and curling when baking, you are going to finish the sandwich off with a piece of parchment paper and another tile placed shiny side down. There you have it, a perfect baking sandwich that results in flat pieces and minimal pesky imperfections that you'll have to sand out later. Note that this baking sandwich method works for pieces that are flat, the same thicknesses, and have dry surfaces. When I work with my alcohol inks, I make sure that the ink is completely dry before layering on the parchment paper and the secondary tile. This baking sandwich might not work for all occasions, but if you take the fundamentals of it, you should come away with some really good baked results and a lot less headaches to sand away later. Tip number 3, buff and sand that surface. After you bake your clay, you're not quite done yet if you're looking for that professional clay finish. Depending on the surface of the clay, I either go with a full sanding and buffing process, or I cover my pieces with a clear coat of resin. In this video, I'm going to talk about the sanding and buffing areas, but I can talk about resin in a different video if that's something you guys like. For designs that won't get damaged with sanding, these are solid colors, flat pieces, things made from canes, basically anything that when you sand your design won't come off. I will go through 400, 600, and 1000 grit sandpaper to get rid of all of the tiny blemishes. Afterwards, and here's the secret, I use a Dremel fixed with a buffing wheel tool to bring my piece to a whole new level. If you've sanded properly up to at least 1000 grit, when you buff, your pieces will come out silky smooth and almost reflective. To take it up one more notch, after buffing, I will rub a little bit of Renaissance wax on the piece and then buff it one more time. This gives it an almost irresistible shine and a finish that you can't even believe came from polymer clay. I searched forever to find a finishing process that would work for me, and this is my go-to process when it comes to sanding and buffing. Moving right along to tip number 4, and that is to work in small batches. First of all, this helps you learn the ins and outs of clay without wasting a lot of time, without wasting a lot of material, and it gives you a lot of freedom to try a bunch of different techniques and processes out there. From a sales side, by offering a wide variety of options from the very beginning, you will be able to see what resonates with your customer before narrowing down and finding your niche. And the last tip is tip number 5, surround yourself with lots of design inspiration. In design school, we were taught to find inspiration everywhere and to capture it in ways that we could reference it back when we needed to get the creative juices flowing. Instead of just following other polymer clay makers, I recommend you look into other fields of art and design and creativity to see what else from out there you can bring into your work. I follow illustrators, graphic designers, woodworkers, resin artists, nature lovers, plant lovers, outdoor people, all of that so that I can be inspired by lots of colors, techniques, patterns, and materials that I might not have seen or thought of before. Also, don't forget that all over inspiration is around, whether it's outside in nature, around your house, your favorite bed sheets, your favorite curtains. Be on the lookout, and once you start being aware, you'll see that there are many cool things that you can recreate in your art. I know I went through a ton of topics super quick, but I just wanted to give you the SparkNotes version of 5 fun tips and 5 important tips for working with clay. But if there's anything else you'd want me to talk about, please let me know and I'd be more than happy to go into more detail. I hope you liked this video and good luck with your Polymer clay creations.